Hello, everyone. I'm here for one of my stories. This is Lindsey Dunn, and today I am excited to be discussing Mortal Kombat, a film that is in theaters right now. And I will be doing that with three fabulous guests who will introduce themselves right now. So, say your name or what you go by, your main outlet, and what your main focus is for your content.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Rosa Parra. I am co-founder and co-host of the Latinx Lens podcast, a podcast that's dedicated to highlighting Latinx representation and contribution in film and television. And yes, we also debuted our website, which is latinxlens.com, where we have our podcast connected to it. And then every time, whenever I get a chance to do reviews, I just post them up there. But yeah, that's what I do. I'm a film reviewer, and I mainly focus on highlighting. I watch the variety of movies. Obviously, we're here for Mortal Kombat, but I mainly try to focus and shine a light on Latinx centric or Latinx created content.
Hi, my name is Caless Davis, also known as Black Nerd Magic. I am a co-host of the Feeling Film podcast, and it's just a podcast where we talk about the new releases that come out each week, and we mostly judge film based on how they make us feel rather than a really strict critique format. I'm also a co-host of the Victims and Villains podcast, and on that podcast, we really mostly highlight the mental health aspect of films. No matter if a film is good or bad, there's always something to talk about when it comes to mental health, especially in this day and age. So we tend to highlight films that deal with that, and we also want to talk to anybody who is dealing with those issues or who want to help out with the cause. Check out Victims and Villains. And also, I'm a member of the Seattle Film Critics Society, and that's mostly how I get my critic badge and watch new films. And I'm mostly here for the movies. I've always loved movies as a kid, and that love has grown just so much over my life. And yeah, thank you once again, Lisney, for inviting me onto this podcast.
So I'm Shaurya Chawla. I'm mostly a reviewer on YouTube. That's how I got started. I originally started off with a Facebook page, but then that got very, very boring. And so I decided I wanted to be more interactive. Then I started to talk a lot more on social media and decided I wanted to do stuff with people. And here we are. So my channel is my name. It used to be called the Cinematic Universe, but then I recently changed it because I decided to branch out a lot more. I review movies, but I also review shows. And recently I also started reviewing video games, which is awesome and also a massive load on my wallet. But it's fun, you know?
Today, we all know we're discussing Mortal Kombat, directed by Simon McQuoid in his feature-length debut, with screenplay by Greg Russo and Dave Callaham, with characters and story based on the video game franchise. The game was created by Ed Boon and John Tobias. In the game, there are 18 surviving realms created by the Elder Gods, and the realms battle for dominion by having each realm's greatest warriors duke it out in a tournament of champions. This movie is a reboot of the previous film series and leads us off with a new character. Cole Young is a mixed martial arts fighter who supports his family by fighting and mostly losing for cash. But after he learns his dragon birthmark is actually a marking that deems him one of Earth's chosen warriors, Cole follows the path set before him to be trained to fight in a high-stakes battle for the universe. Along the way, he is assisted and sabotaged by an international cast of characters, some mortal and some immortal. My question to you guys is, what is your history with the Mortal Kombat franchise, and did that influence how much you enjoyed the movie?
Well, I mean, if you're a 90s kid like me, then Mortal Kombat was your religion as a child. I remember having the Sega Genesis, and outside of Sonic, Mortal Kombat was like the game I used to play almost every day. I mean, I don't understand what my parents were doing, letting me play it, seeing that there was blood and there was fatalities and everything like that. But they trusted me enough to know good and well. So that was my game. And then recently I got back into gaming after a long hiatus, and I played the new generation of Mortal Kombat games, and they have turned out to be great. every bit. I mean, the visuals are already much improved, but I feel like when I'm fighting with the characters, they feel like themselves. And for me, that's what got my anticipation level up high for this film, even though it is a video game film, which oftentimes they inspire a lot of or like, you know, gruffs of despair because we haven't had too many good ones. I was excited because I was ready for them to see what they were going to do coming off the 90s Mortal Kombat films. Like the visuals are already going to be the visuals were obviously going to be well improved. And, you know, there's a lot more things you can do now. You know, the action choreography has gotten better in Hollywood over the last few years. So that was going to be better too. But I was wondering how they were going to treat the characters. Were they going to make them feel like they came from the video game and they jumped onto the big screen? And I think this film did a commanding job of doing that. So for me coming in, we'll get into it, you know, in a little bit. But yes, I was strongly in favor of seeing this film.
Yeah, my experience isn't as extensive. I just grew up playing it. I'm also a 90s kid. I was born in the late 80s. So yes, I would play it a lot. I would go to the local marketplace. They would always have like this little mini arcade. And they only had 2 games, and one of them was Pac-Man, the other one was Mortal Kombat. So I had to bounce off either one of those 2 games. So yes, whenever I had quarters available, I would just go and play it, and that's only my association with this franchise. I was able to watch the 1995 film. Um, but other than that, I don't have like a deep video. I'm not a really much a video game person. So I guess my connection with the franchise isn't necessarily as extensive. But I was going into this with mellow expectations, not necessarily high ones, because like it was previously mentioned, the video game adaptation films tend to be not the best out there. So but yes, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get into it in a few minutes. But yeah, my experience with this franchise isn't necessarily as extensive.
Interestingly, the thing that came up earlier regarding parents not quite understanding the gory games and all that, yeah, that was my family. So I actually, interestingly, did not own a Mortal Kombat game by myself for the longest time. So there was a lot of extensive rules when it came to like me as a kid, where it was like, computer time was like 7 p.m. on Fridays and stuff like that, whatever. So my gaming was extensively limited. So my friends, I would sometimes go, to their place, and they had the game. So half the time I would end up playing the game like with them on their systems. So that was my like thing growing up for the longest time. So I got good at it. I played it a bunch of times with them, all the last gen stuff. This is before the newer, installments came out, and the visuals just went from being what they were to this the more realistic stuff. So I've had a gradual like increase with it. I used to watch the movie. I watched the movies. I watched the original 2 movies that came out, the 95 one, which was often considered like still by many to be the best video game movie ever made. Which is fun. And then I also watched Annihilation, which was fun in a different way. Yeah, we'll bring that up later. I'll bring it up later. That'll come up in conversation. Yeah, for this one, I was excited for a couple of reasons. One, it actually was the casting, because when they announced casts, like when they announced Hiroyuki Sanada as Scorpion and all that, I was like, oh shit, that's amazing. That's a name right there. And also because it was rated R. So I thought, okay, this is 2021, rated R. You've got this cast of characters. You can really do some cool stuff with this. So my expectations were measured, but they were also a little like, they were heightened, because I was like, okay, you can really do a lot. So there was some hype going in. That's all. I'll put it that way.
The only connection I had going in is that the Black Mirror episode, I really like Striking Vipers. The world created in that episode is kind of based on Mortal Kombat. And Ludi Lin, who plays Liu Kang, is the co-star of that episode. So I was kind of like, oh, I recognize him from Striking Vipers, and I know that game fictional game was based on Mortal Kombat, but I just really knew nothing. And oddly enough, I feel like that maybe kind of helped me enjoy the movie as much as I did, because it helped me go into it really with little expectation of seeing nothing more than a few great action scenes, and I did and got more. So let's move into talking about the characters, which you already kind of mentioned, Shaurya, that there were some great ones. Who were the standout characters for you in this movie? And there were a lot of characters, so maybe focus on who your favorite 2 or 3 were, if you don't mind.
The first one is Jax. And obviously it's kind of a personal connection because he's the guy who I usually choose to play as my character in the video game. So, but it was nice seeing him. He's this military veteran, he's part of special forces. He has like a relationship with Sonya that is touched on a good bit in the film. And I'm glad that they added that dramatic backstory for them. And seeing him when he gets his arms taken off, it hurt. And, you know that he's eventually going to get the arms, but just him being able to come back from that, and he has the skinny, like little struggle arms and everything. And you see he tries to punch and fight, and it's obviously a lot of work and effort, and it's getting him nowhere. So the scene where he just gets his big metal arms and starts going to work was one of my favorites. Another character I love is Sub-Zero. Even though Sub-Zero is the villain of this film, I love the way that he's used. Like, he really truly feels like a badass. I mean, just the way that he works his ice, and the way that he in the fight choreography. I mean, I'll keep saying that throughout this whole podcast, but the action is fluid. It's nice. It has like a lot of great moments, especially when it comes down to the brutalities and the fatalities. So Sub-Zero was another guy that I love. And also I like seeing Liu Kang. And the reason why I like Liu Kang is because in this film, they really show how he worked with fire. And I noticed that in the original Mortal Kombat films, that wasn't really an emphasis. You mostly focus on his martial arts. So I'm glad that the film added that detail of him being able to use fire to open doors and use it as a weapon. And then also you get to see him do his 20 hit combo kick in the air that he's famous for. So yeah, those are 3 of my favorite characters in this film.
Normally, when I used to play, I didn't used to play a lot because I never had Nintendo at home. I never had any of the video games. I would literally have to go to an arcade, and I was broke, so I would go like every other month or so. But the character I would always choose was Kitana, obviously the one that you can relate to, which of course was not even here in this movie. But yes, she was the character I always liked. I was always drawn to. So some of my favorite characters in this movie, again, I do have to say Sub-Zero was certainly one of them. I like what they did with his character. And yeah, those first 10 minutes of the film certainly established him as the big bad villain in this movie. In fact, I was a bit upset that he wasn't the main baddie guy here, and that he had to answer to a higher ranking per se. But yeah, Sub-Zero definitely, Scorpion of course. I think the rivalry that those two characters had is certainly the strongest elements in this movie, in my opinion. And I think those were the only two, the only two characters that I genuinely liked a lot.
Yeah, so I guess Sub-Zero is our the MVP of this movie. So, but yeah, I agree on that, actually. I think they did a really good job with him. I think the actor, Joe Taslim, is that how you pronounce his name? That he was really, really good. And like, beyond just the opening scene, like every time he showed up, it just, there was this sort of impact to him as that character, which I was hoping for. I mean, aside from the fact that he can do cool stuff like freeze someone's blood and make a knife out of it, which was awesome, we'll talk about that. Yeah. Like all of that included, just the fact that he got the vibe of the character really well. They got that in the film really, really great. So he was a standout for me. I was also thinking, like, who else could it be? I mean, also Scorpion. I gotta give it, because again, when I think of Scorpion, there was just a couple of things that I really wanted to see out of him. I mean, there was, of course, Get Over Here. That was cool. But also signature movements that he was doing that was pretty great. They captured him really, really well. And I also got to give it to Kung Lao. They did a really good job with him. You know, I think for the time that we got him, he was really, really good. And also bonus, I want to give it to Kamal, because they did a really good job capturing him, including the voice when he walks on the screen, and the look. They really accurately brought him onto big screen. I was very impressed.
Mm-hmm. I also had Kung Lao. I'm a sucker for training sequences and like snappy people with snappy repartee as they're training. So that was great. I also really liked Kano. I know, Caless, you said you didn't like.
Oh yeah, Kano.
But he just
annoying.
You know,
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that.
With that character, you didn't know which way he was gonna go, and that was the kind of fun thing about him. Is it's like, you know, is he a good guy or a bad guy? How's he gonna end up? I have this. And that's another one of the tropes I really like, is kind of flawed or unlikable characters that end up doing the right thing. So you weren't sure about him, and I saw the movie in a theater. I know that's controversial right now, but his parts really played well with the audience. People were laughing and really enjoying it. So that was really fun to see. I think those were probably my standouts. Let's go into now what parts you really liked of the movie in general without spoilers. I'm trying to keep this spoiler free. I'll go ahead and start this time, actually, because we were just talking about the characters. I liked the variety of stories in general that each of the characters had. I feel like each one had sort of a mini arc or something a little bit different about them. I think a lot of people have said that they think the character, that there just wasn't much to the characters. And it's like, well, how much do you need for an action flick? You just need a little bit of something or a little bit of motivation. It was appropriate for what we were doing in this first movie. Like I said, I liked the training sequences, and I liked that they had the new character. Maybe it's because I'm new to the series, and he had this sort of past that haunted him, where he wasn't sure, where did he come from? Where were his roots? And, you know, he was able to find that as he's finding his inner strength. And the gore level was surprising for a video game movie. I actually was like, ugh, like actually moving back when I wasn't expecting the level of yuck that there was in the screen. So that was fun. What else did you guys really like about it?
I would say the opening scene was excellent. We always talk about in films that an opening scene sets the tempo, it sets the tone of a film. If you can get a great opening scene, then you're pretty much almost good to go, as long as you don't mess up the rhythm and flow. And it feels so different from the rest of the film. The opening scene does, I guess, because of the lush cinematography and the forest. I mean, it looks really, really well done. It almost looked like something from a video game. I mean, that's just how good it looked. It had like a fantasy quality to it. And of course, we get that scene where Sub-Zero is fighting Hanzo after he, murders his family. And we get to see already that foreshadowing of when Scorpion comes later in the film. So I love the tone that sets up. I also liked the early parts with Jax, especially when he's fighting Sub-Zero. There's the early part of the fight is when Sub-Zero and Jax are fighting, and Jax is holding his own, and then he just turns to Sub-Zero. He's like, I did 6 tours, motherfucker. And then afterwards, Sub-Zero proceeds to just destroy him. But I just thought that was a good moment right there. I also loved seeing the Outworld, seeing how that looked, and seeing the evil characters. And, the great thing about this film is that not only are you interested in the good characters, but you're also interested in the bad characters. Usually the bad characters in the film, you usually are rooting against them and you want them to fail. But I felt in this film, I just wanted to see more of them. I felt that we didn't get enough scenes with them outside of the fight scenes. I wanted to see more of their personality really shine, because they're designed very well. I mean, especially Goro, even though he's all visual, he looks fantastic. He looks great, you know. So I wanted to see more of that. And then, of course, when we get to the end, I won't really spoil it or say who's fighting who, but I'm glad that you get to see that throughout the film, some of these characters they have a nemesis, you know, a person on the other side that they really don't like. And I like that at the end of the film, it's just them essentially like, hey, you go get this person because I know you got beef with them. You go get this person because you need revenge. I really love that detail right there.
Yeah, I will double down on the visuals here because that was one of my favorite aspects of the movie by far. It visually looks really, really, really good. The fight sequences I liked most of it. Like mostly, especially the opening scene was great. But like it was interesting because it did feel like it was from a different movie for a second. Like when you actually then transition into this is not a spoiler, it's like the first few minutes. But when you go from that transitioning into Cole Young's character, and it's like it feels like we've just completely different movie just started right over there. Because the opening kind of I was just a completely different video game, but I was just playing Ghost of Tsushima, and it was kind of reminded me of a couple of moments visually reminded me of that for a second. There's this side quest in it, but one of the things was visual, so sure. I like the adherence to lore, Mortal Kombat lore. There's a lot of that in this movie, and some of it was really, really well handled. Like the Outworld stuff, it was great seeing Shang Tsung and his little place with other characters like Melina and all. That was great. It was great seeing Raiden with Liu Kang and Kung Lao. But one other thing I liked, and I wanted to emphasize on this, I really like the score. I know a lot of people have been on and off on this, but I like the music, and that's important because so many of these characters have their own themes, and they're very distinct, like badass themes. And Benjamin Wallfish, he did a great job with the themes, like especially Sub-Zero. Every time he entered, there's like this bass score that plays like bah, bah. It's like that was.
So were the themes kind of similar or the same as some of the games, or did they bring in new music?
I haven't played some of the new gen stuff, so I'm not sure. But I think more I'm talking about in terms of like the movie, like even if they didn't translate it directly from the games, I think for the movie it's important that they made that distinction, for each character. So every character you walked out of the film thinking like, oh, that was that musical cue for them, and that was this musical cue for them. Like eventually, no spoilers. There's one for Scorpion that's may or may not be the game theme. Well, no spoilers on that. But yeah, that's kind of what I meant. They did a really good job of capturing that too.
I'm in the same boat as them too in terms of the fighting sequences, the visuals, that they were perhaps the strongest elements in the film. I think I have to slightly give a little shout out to Kano, even though I hated him and he was annoying. Whenever there was no fighting sequences, he certainly outshined everybody in that on screen. So certainly, and it might speak volumes about my personality, but take it as you wish. I was quite fond of the contemporary comparisons he was making with different characters. I was just laughing I was just laughing out loud while he was saying that. Something I would like to highlight are the costumes. That's certainly something that I think they nailed, and this is just coming from someone that only played probably just the first version of Mortal Kombat, but I certainly knew who I was watching on screen, and the moment they reappeared, I immediately was able to recognize them. So yes, I think the costumes is certainly something to highlight.
Let's get a little snarky for a minute. So I know we're going to have some pain points, but there's just a few things I've heard several times, and I just want to know if you agree with these or not. Let's just get them out on the table. So The first one is they should not have made a new character be the main character. That was a terrible decision.
I don't agree with that. I mean, Cole Young isn't exactly the most exciting or charismatic character, but he does. I want to quote one of my friends, Aaron, actually, who said this on the podcast we did about this film. He said that Cole Young is essentially a portal into new people getting to know about Mortal Kombat. Because we have to remember, I mean, there's a lot more people who are like, Rosa and doesn't have much experience than people like, me. We actually played the games and had more movies, So Cole Young is essentially that character who's going to guide those new people to understand what Mortal Kombat is, because it's not a very confusing film, but you still want people to know about the lore who haven't been able to play the game. So I don't agree with that criticism. I think it's kind of weak. Like, yes, criticize maybe the performance if it didn't fit your standards, but the introduction of that character is not an issue to me.
It sort of creates this audience feeling, because not everybody in the audience watching this film, or whether you watched it on HBO Max at home, whatever, it's not like everybody in the world has played Mortal Kombat and is watching this movie with that idea. Some people are watching it for the very first time, acquainted to this idea, who have no idea who Sub-Zero is, who have no idea who Sonya Blade or Jax or anyone is. So the idea of Cole Young as a character, sort of being that introductory window, like was being said, was, I think, a really cool, concept. I think it's in the execution where they fumbled up a little bit. But I think he could have been a more compelling character, but he wasn't exactly. I didn't exactly, finish watching the film thinking, oh yeah, Cole Young, he was cool. Like I mean, I would have liked that maybe to happen, but no, I don't agree with that criticism at all. That it ruined the movie or anything for me. No, not at all.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Although I do have to say that I'm not really. How can I say this without sounding so rude? I really don't care. In terms of if they would introduce the new character or not, I don't think I don't criticize necessarily the introduction of a new character. However, I'm not particularly fond of the performance, but I'm sure we'll be getting into that shortly. Pero in general, I don't mind it. I'm not really picky. In terms of video games and superhero movies and comic book movies, the last thing I use when it comes to criticizing these films is logic. And in those terms, I really don't care.
Okay.
I don't mind it either, so.
And I have nothing to add to anything you guys said. So.
But how does he have a spinning hat that cuts people in half? So like that.
You'd be surprised everything I've heard. I've heard people like, how does Aquaman like dive into the ocean with jeans on? I was like, really? Jeans? That's what you're worried about? Him wearing jeans? You're okay with there being a whole other world under the ocean, but the jeans is what bothers you.
I think I said the same thing. Just because I've swum with jeans on, it's horrible.
Levi's get heavy underwater. You see, it's like there's a thing, right? So
he's supposed to go under the sea, right?
How can he swim?
That's how his leg muscles are so strong, though, because he's swimming with jeans, heavy jeans. Second snappy opinion: because Simon McQuoid has never made a movie before, there's obvious nepotism going on, and he doesn't deserve to direct it.
What?
That's a criticism? I've swore this is the first time I've heard this.
I've never heard this one. No, this is.
There's been complaints about. They're like, who is this guy? Like, where did he come from? He hasn't directed anything, except for a video, like commercials or stuff like that. And so.
Let's see. I mean, it's this thing called first-time directors. It's like these directors, they've probably been studying the craft for years. They've been trying to hone themselves and really learn the techniques of being behind the camera. And so they're often, hey, Steven Spielberg started as a first-time director. I mean, Stanley Kubrick started as a first-time director. I mean, there's been a lot of directors, and not only first-time directors, but directors who have relatives or family members who were directors or people who worked in the industry, and they were able to get a shot. Hey, I understand that nepotism is a real thing, but if there's a person there who has the skill to be able to make a film like this as a first-time director, I think we should be applauding that more than considering that a criticism. I could see if Mortal Kombat was exactly the film that was supposed to be, and then somebody got hired and they have no effort or any talent or any dedication behind the camera, and it's easily seen. But I have no question in wanting to see more from this guy. I'm already excited for the sequel. So this is once again another baseless criticism.
I don't really agree with this one because, and the reason I also think that that criticism should not really be there is because for the most part, aside from some choppiness here and there in the second act, he did a pretty solid job with directing it. Like, especially again, no spoilers, the third act when it gets to the real, action stuff. Like he did a solid job. I was very impressed actually, especially when it came to one specific fight sequence. But I don't know. I don't know. Like and like Caless was saying, like first timers, like there's always a first time movie. Like you're gonna have that. I mean, it's like again, everybody started somewhere. I don't know. I was just because it was Star Wars Day. I was talking to someone about we were talking about Abrams and Rian Johnson and stuff like that. So J.J. Abrams' first movie was Mission Impossible 3. Like that's what you started off with, and like of course now he's gone and done other stuff, but it's like you gotta start somewhere. There's somewhere just like an origin story in there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with this one at all. No.
Any thoughts, Rosa?
Maybe.
Ross,
I don't. Okay, how I understand where the criticism is coming from, and somewhat agree with it. In terms of, and I guess this is coming because I've spent a whole lot of time within their own league, which is a site that it's dedicated to highlighting female representation and female directors. So in terms of female directors, there's a documentary called I forgot, I think Half the Picture, and it highlights all the difficulties and all the everything they have to go through to even qualify, to even come near a blockbuster film or a high budget film. Women have to work hard. And I understand the first instance is gonna be like, oh my gosh, it's been making about women, feminism, blah, blah, blah. Not necessarily, but being at the other side of the coin and seeing the underrepresentation behind the scenes, behind the camera particularly, I do understand why the criticism is coming from. In my opinion, it is evident that this is a first-time director, first-time screenwriter, that certainly, if it wasn't for the action, because I do think the editing needed a whole lot more sharpening to do, if it wasn't for the action sequences, I probably would not be interested in the sequel.
I think for me, I think I've seen a recent trend. A lot of the movies I review are independent movies. So with a lot of independent studios, it's quite common to see a sort of a person go from commercials or music videos to directing a first feature-length film. Like Amal Harrell did that with Honey Boy. So before that, she was doing music videos, and so that's very common. But it is interesting, and so when I heard this criticism, I did some research online and was trying to find, could I come up with anything that kind of explains how he got hired, and the best I could find was he delivered a pitch that they liked. But I do think it's interesting when we see somebody kind of get to the top of the pack. Who is that? Obviously, anybody who is getting to direct a feature-length film, they did that. They were able to do that because of opportunity, and a lot of opportunity becomes because of who you know or somebody is sponsoring you. So hopefully, as people from many identities are being sponsored and brought to the front and given a voice, we would see that with many types of people, not just men. We'd see it with women. We'd see it with minorities. So thanks for chiming in on that, guys. That was fun. The fact that there was not a tournament ruined the movie. That's another thing I've heard a lot.
I thought it was actually clever that the director decided to not go with the standard, hey, let's get all these fighters together, let's put them in a ring, and then just have characters stand on the side just cheering for other characters to win or lose. I felt that it was good that you had the Outworld that were seeing that the prophecy that they could lose this tournament, they actually are going to go against the rules and actually cheat their way to taking over the Earth, which makes sense. They are villains. They're looking for alternate ways of doing things that otherwise would be illegal. And I felt that Shang Tsung, he said, hey, it's better for us just to go to Earth and take out these competitors one by one, so we don't have to worry about potentially losing a tournament, because anything could have went haywire. It's not guaranteed that they would have won, even though they won 9 straight. It's not guaranteed they would have won another one. So I felt that it was very clear from the director and the writer to go against the standard, let's have a big tournament, and just have this instead actually a full narrative, not just a story that just gets interrupted by a tournament, but actually a narrative that involves the villains trying to take down the heroes in alternate ways.
I thought it was kind of like having a tournament without having a tournament, because each person fought somebody. We got to see the fight, and it was kind of like, here's the plan, guys. Each of you is going to do this, and then we'll take down this person together. So you can all maybe see I'm wearing my Miyagi-Do. This is my fandom, Cobra Kai, Karate Kid universe. So that was sort of something people put out in when the second series filmed, that there was no tournament. Instead of a tournament, there was a big fight, an all-out fight brawl in the school grounds. So they don't always end with a tournament, because that would be boring, right? So they're giving us something to look forward to, hopefully. What do you think could have made it better? What do you think are the major pain points of the movie? Let's let Rosa go first, too, since she's usually one of the last to get to talk.
Ooh, what could have been better? Script, the directing, the editing, anything that has to do with filmmaking, that could have been better. And in terms of and the editing, I mean that some of the fighting sequences, particularly the ones that were taking place during the dark, like the Sonya Blade and Kano one, it was very difficult to follow through, and the editing was quite choppy and at times very. It lost me a few times, particularly the darker ones. But what else? I think those are my main issues. The script, some of this dialogue was like, oh, really? But yet again, I don't come to a Mortal Kombat film to see the next Academy Award winning script. You just don't do that either. Or directed film or picture, best picture. I'm aware of that. So I can't be as strict on it as I normally would be. But I think for the next, if they do the sequel, I'm not sure if it's greenlit or not. Certainly the editing, if they can sharpen that editing, it would certainly benefit particularly the fighting sequences. But also, whatchamacallit, yeah, the script, the writing, some of the dialogue. Even though I didn't mind them inputting the finishing moves, like the flawless victory and all that good stuff, I didn't mind that. But there were some things that were said that was just eye-rolling inducing, and it was just like, oh, really? Come on. But other than that, I think those are my issues with it. Anything has to do with filmmaking, the core center of it.
I say that Cole Young could have been a better lead. I know that I said earlier that he's only the portal for new viewers to come in and learn about the Mortal Kombat lore, but he really just it's not particularly his fault, but he just gets outshined by all the supporting characters. And maybe that could be that supporting characters have been with us far longer than Cole Young has been, or maybe because the director asked the actor to play with a more subdued tone. And you definitely don't want to reach into the overly parody category, because then you have characters like Johnny Cage who can do that for you. I just felt that Cole Young, he's just not that interesting. And then once he gets his powers are really not anything except for just a shield over his body, and it can take damage. And I was like, cool, like what's the it factor for that, and I'll agree with Rosa. Some of the writing is not good, especially in the case of Kano. I felt that Kano, he has some good moments. He had some good moments. I'm not going to like really trash him all too bad like I did in my review, but I felt that he also had just some bits of just like the most casualist like racism jokes that you can pull out of a hat. Like it's not even like anything that would be like, oh wow, that's actually kind of clever. Like no, it's just a casual thing. Like hey, you know, he tells Kung Lao, hey, like I'm going to put that sombrero up your ass, or like he tells like Liu Kang just to pass him an egg roll, and I was like, is this supposed to be funny, or is like, I mean, it's not even hitting me anywhere. I mean, I just felt that a little bit toned down Kano would have probably been better for me, and also some of the editing is not good, especially the Sonya and Kano fight that takes place in the house. Like I was trying so hard to see who was getting who punches. I didn't know who was winning the fight because I could hardly see who was landing punches and kicking. And I also felt that there's so much more opportunity to expand this world in a sequel. It feels like a beginning, you know, and it is a beginning, but it feels like that they're trying to just establish the lore of the series and not really trying to introduce too many new faces and fighters, because there was a lot of fighters that I wanted to see in this that were missing. And maybe they'll come through in a sequel if it's greenlit. But if it's not greenlit, then it's kind of a missed opportunity to not have more people in there. But most of my criticisms are nitpicks. There's a couple of big issues I have, but otherwise, you know, solid. So
Mm-hmm.
I already did a whole review on this movie, and pretty much everything that I talked about in that. My biggest issue is it's very choppy editing. It really is. But it's not so much just the editing. It's also the fact that because the editing ends up being a bit choppy, particularly in the second act, which is when things, you know, slow down a bit because they wanted you to take some time with the characters before all the action starts up. The problem is that I feel like somewhere along the way that also muddles up the way they're trying to tell the story. And it felt like they were trying to cover a lot of ground, a lot of different characters, trying to wrap up a lot of arcs, you know, trying to develop certain arcs a lot more. And I just feel like somewhere along the way, some things were lost in translation, because it's like somewhere those two things, the editing and then the writing, they just did not sync up. And so along the way, certain characters that I think the movie was trying to make you care about a lot more, you ended up not really caring for, and that in the way that the movie wanted you to care for them. Yeah, you know. And this is particularly in the case of Sonya Blade, which I can't really go into because, again, spoilers, but there's a specific, like, there's a point A to point B story for her. They're trying to get to something.
Right.
And when it does, no spoilers, and it gets to that point, I think the movie's trying to go for that, you know, hell yeah, it happened. And, okay, it happened. Great. So I just feel like it's wasted too much time in the focusing on being stuck on point A, that when point B happened, and like, oh yeah, I guess we just went from that to that in like a second. So yeah, that arc completion felt like, in fact, the most accomplished arc of the movie in a way for me felt like Jax's arc. That's really the one that felt the best done. And to an extent, Scorpions, which was pretty simple an arc, but again, can't really talk about that.
At this point, I'd love for you all to just tell us what your current rating is for Mortal Kombat. This is going to be letterbox style, so out of 5 stars. And would you recommend it to particular groups of people or audiences?
My rating was a strong 3 out of 5. And I would recommend this film for anybody. You know, if you love action films that involve a lot of martial arts and some combat, if you love nice visuals, if you love great costume design, and if you just want to have a good time, just go and watch this on the biggest screen you can, see it in IMAX, see it in Dolby Cinema. Yes, this gets a strong recommendation from me.
I gave it actually a 3.5 out of 5, okay, even though I sounded the most negative out of all. How ironic is that? You know what? The thing is, rewatchability plays a major factor in my score. And I've seen this movie 4 times already. And I wouldn't mind watching it again. So the fact that I can actually sit down and rewatch this film certainly says something about the movie, regardless of my of my criticisms towards it. And yeah, same. I think anybody who is a hardcore fan will definitely be able to enjoy the film. And yeah, anybody who's really into action genre film. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like we did it out of 10 in my review, but I think I'd chalk that up to about a 3 out of 5. That would be me too. The fans I've spoken to ever since it came out have actually mostly been very, very pleased with the movie. So I would say, yeah, for the fans, this is, I guess you're gonna get what you want. Look, when you go into a Mortal Kombat movie, you have a certain set of, like a checklist on this is what I want to see. Here's what I want to see. This is what all of that. And this movie covered most of that, for me. I was done watching it. I did not go to a theater, by the way. Sorry guys, I was at home on HBO Max. My bad. I'm like, look, there's a second wave happening here. There's no theaters open. So the unfortunate thing is that but despite that, I watched it a couple of times now, and I still enjoyed both viewings. So yeah, I'd stick with the 3.
I am at 3.5 out of 5. And so for me, a 3 means this is watchable. I recommend it. 3.5 means I liked it a little more than that, so that's where I put it. And yeah, people who like action movies, fans of the franchise, if you played the games and are curious what they did with it, all of those things. Let's move on to like the bigger topic of video game franchises. So what are some movies based on video games, either explicitly or subtly, that you think really work?
Would Zack Snyder's 2004 Dawn of the Dead work as an option? I mean, I know it's a remake of George A. Romero's, but they had started making Dawn of the Dead arcade games and shoot 'em ups in the 90s. So I'm wondering if that counts.
It's like whatever. It could be, like I said, it's based specifically on, or it's just like my pick would be Tron, for instance. That's not a real video game, but it's in that kind. It's a movie about a video game world. So if that helps you narrow down what kinds of things you can talk about here. Yeah,
that's perfect, because then I got another good option for you. So yeah, Dawn of the Dead would be a great one for me. And also Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One, which is based on VR and, augmented reality. I think that was a fantastic film. Also, that film suffers from a lot of stupid criticisms. People think that it promotes toxic fandom. People are like, oh, well, there's too many of these characters here in this film. I didn't understand why it's just like a pop culture love fest. And I was like, well, did you read the book? I mean, and if you didn't get that
the book doubled down on it more, in fact.
Yeah, and then Ready Player 2 just quadrupled it at that point. So, but I'm a big fan of that film, so that's another good one. And yeah, that's the only 2 that really come to my mind.
Yeah, I am not big on video games, so my knowledge of video games is none. I know I just watched the Tomb Raider with Alicia Vikander. I thought that was a really good movie. And I don't know, is Detective Pikachu a video game?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, yes.
All right. So there we go. Ryan Reynolds. Loved it.
Yeah, actually, I did enjoy Pikachu quite a bit. Actually, I thought for the world that they were trying to establish, they did a really good job. Also, the best video game movie of all time now seems to be Sonic the Hedgehog, which, fair enough. That was a fun movie too. Yeah, I did enjoy that. I actually like that you mentioned Tron, because Tron is a movie that I go back to quite a bit. Both of them, actually. The first one's awesome in its own regard. Legacy's got its really cool moments too, and another score that should have been Oscar nominated. But yeah, I think the best video game movies are the ones that really just understand that that's what they are, video game movies, and not trying to be anything more than that. Assassin's Creed. Anyway, so I'm yeah. Yeah, I saw that in the theater. I saw that in the theater, not Mortal Kombat. What a shame. So,
Just a fun little list here. I found the top rated video game movie, the top 10 according to Rotten Tomatoes, and I'll just read these out. The Angry Birds movie is number 10. Number 9 is the 1995 Mortal Kombat. Then next is Final Fantasy Spirits Within. Then Monster Hunter, which just came out this year. Rampage, Tomb Raider 2018, which you just mentioned, Rosa. Mortal Kombat, which we're talking about right now. Sonic the Hedgehog, Pokemon Detective Pikachu, and the number 1 is Angry Birds 2. But even that, the approval rating is only 73%. So our bar for, it seems like in general in our world, the bar for video game movies, even the ones that are considered the best, is pretty low. So are there some video game franchises that haven't been made that you wish would be made in the future, whether it's brand new or maybe a reboot? Any high hopes and dreams?
Well, since Hollywood won't man up and give me that Halo film that had been teasing me since I was in high school, I would love to see somebody make a film based on Grand Theft Auto. Like, I know it's going to be a tough task because in video games, you can get away a lot with satire and just having these different genres meld in. It's very hard to do it in film form. But I would love somebody to see a crack at it because the GTA games, especially San Andreas and Grand Theft Auto 5, they have layered stories featuring, protagonists that you can actually get behind. Even though you're causing mayhem with them, you feel for them on a personal level because of the story, because of the screenwriting, and because of the voice acting. And I would like somebody to actually bring that to film form because I think someone could do a pretty good job. Get somebody like a Tarantino, or maybe get a Paul let me see, I'm trying to think of his name, Paul Thomas Anderson, or even get somebody like Scorsese to get involved with it. I would love to see somebody make a GTA film.
Well, they're already making my favorite video game franchise into a TV show. So go with the second best option now. Honestly, if given the fact that we've already got Blade Runner, I mean, Cyberpunk would be cool to see as a movie. It would hopefully be less broken than the game. Yeah, sorry guys. That's it. I'd love to see the Arkham games as movies, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which of the featured trainers that were in this movie would you rather be trained with, if you have a preference? Liu Kang or Kung Lao?
I would rather take Liu Kang because, I mean, Liu Kang, he's the guy. I mean, he's the most known. He's a legend. I would rather take guidance from him, because I want to know how to do that 20 kick in the air combo move that he does. I want to learn how to do that. And I always love that he has somewhat of a bandana tied around his head. Like, I love the design of Liu Kang. I've always loved it since I was a kid in the 90s playing him on the original Mortal Kombat. So that would be my choice.
I'm actually gonna go with Kung Lao if he lends me his hat. Because I don't think I'm gonna have any powers or anything like that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with him.
Same. I want the spinning hat, razor hat. Listen, I want hats. I don't have good hats.
Well, also, the nice thing about the hat is because it serves dual purposes. So you're like, you thought it was just a hat, but no, it's something else.
It would have really helped in high school. Sorry, bullies.
So this might be a more interesting question. If you could pick one person from any universe to train with to be a good fighter, who would it be? I'll go first because I already know what my answer would be to give you a chance to think. So probably not too big of a surprise. My answer would be Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid. I mean, the man never, but no one could ever lay a finger on him. And also, I just like his style of teaching. I feel like he's very patient, and he works with that muscle memory, and he's just a very wise person. And I miss him being in that universe. I wish he were in Cobra Kai now. So anyway, that is my answer.
I just finished, I think it was yesterday, I was watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So I think I'm going to just lean back and say that I'm not going to butcher her name. So I'm just going to say the Michelle Yeoh character.
I'm going to pick Morpheus from The Matrix. I remember loving The Matrix. I still love The Matrix, but I remember the first scenes where Neo gets into The Matrix and he has those training sessions with Morpheus, and he's telling him, not just telling him just how to beat him physically, but telling him like it's more about using your mind. And I'm all about the mental space, because the mental space is very important, more than sometimes what your body can do. So I also like to have Morpheus, and also I get a chance to wear those glasses that he always wears, which looks always like too small for him, but they fit him well at the same time. It's weird.
I think I'd have to go with Yoda, and I'm not just saying that because it's Star Wars Day. It's just I don't know. I just like every time I think of someone who would be like this, wise leader who would take on the universe, I always think of him, because it's just, I don't know, maybe it's because growing up watching Empire and the original trilogy or whatever, it's just that there's this like sense of him, like it's just this calm state and can just do these really amazing things at the same time. I think I'd have to go with Yoda, man. Also, he's just funny. So yeah.
That is all the questions I have for you guys today. Love for each of you to kind of say where people can find more of you if they would like to do that.
Well, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and even letterboxd.com, where I write most of my film reviews under the name Black Nerd Magic. You can find me on Facebook as my name, Caless Davis, Caless, last name Davis. And I know I'm going to bring people back to the late 2000s, but hey, I have an active Tumblr. And if you want to search for it, it's Unfiltered Black Nerd, just in case anybody wants to check it out, which I'm pretty sure no one does, because Tumblr it's a blast from the past. So
So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, I think I'm on Facebook, I'm not sure, and Letterboxd at Rosa's Reviews. And yes, make sure you go follow Latinx Lens, which is also available on every social media platform. And check out our website, latinxlens.com. And our podcast is also available on every podcast platform.
You can find me in two main places right now. So you can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on YouTube under this name, Shaurya Chawla. So I'm pretty easy to find. There are like 7 Shaurya Chawlas on Twitter, but there's only one, this one. I'm the famous one. So follow the famous one, please. So please, you can check me out on that. And like I said, I drop reviews every few days on YouTube under my channel's name. So please go ahead and check that out. Would love to see you all there.
And you can find me on Twitter at one of my stories with the number 1, or on my website, which is oneofmystories.com, or on Letterboxd as well. I think I am on Instagram, but I don't really put movie stuff there, so that wouldn't be the best place to find me. And that is all we have for you guys today. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining me, Rosa, Shaurya, and Caless. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
See
you.
you later.